big game this week, game day, going to South Carolina, going to Columbia. They shocked us last week against Kentucky. I wasn't expecting it, but we saw a defensive performance that is hard to compare to anyone else. I mean, they gave Brock Vandagriff a pretty bad day behind the Kentucky O-line. LSU with a super competent quarterback we saw against USC, they're going to be on the lookout for this USC, South Carolina D-line to put some pressure on them. How are you feeling for this game?
Yeah, and I think you started off on the right point. I feel pretty good about this game. I love the noon kickoff time. I love that College Game Day's there. And you talked about that defense that was super stout last game. Dylan Stewart, it has to be the highlighting point. He's got 2.5 sacks on the year as a defensive end. He's a true freshman. So he is easily and quickly climbing up the ranks in terms of a top freshman in the country. And really what I believe LSU might not necessarily be prepared to see is this pass defense, right? USC right now is top 20 in terms of passing yards per play given up. So they play a pretty stout defense, and they have not also seen a quarterback like Garrett Nussmeier. So that'll be an interesting kind of matchup and battle between those two sides, right? The SC defense versus what Garrett Nussmeier could do on the passing side.
Yeah, he looked solid, especially at the beginning there in the game against USC Southern California. He was really tearing them apart before they did this weird transition to run the ball a lot more. In that game, Xavier Thomas, they needed to get him more involved. In that game, he only touched the ball, 6% of plays. Kyron Lacey up to 16. But those are two guys that if you can get them going early against South Carolina, you can really blow this game up. Because we have seen that accuracy from Nussmeier, we have seen what they're able to do. Where the offense falters a little bit is the red zone attack. We saw them not take the points. We saw them miss a couple more times in the red zone and settle. You don't want to do that here in South Carolina. You have to capitalize on your drives. Take the points when you get them, but really try to put it in the end zone.
Yeah, and really when it comes to scoring in the red zone and scoring in general, you talked about Kyron Lacey. So Kyron Lacey leads the SEC in touchdowns, receiving, of course. And you ultimately need to get the ball to him in the red zone. That should be your safety blanket, your safety net. Obviously there's a time to try to take that risk if you see a touchdown opportunity versus a field goal to maybe carry momentum. But I think in this game you play it safe. South Carolina seems like that type of team that you don't want to let hang around. They are I think top 20 or top 30 in terms of red zone scoring in the country. And while a lot of their opportunities have come at the point of turnovers recovered, they're still able to finish in the red zone. So if LSU is not able to finish and South Carolina is able to finish, this could be a much closer game than LSU might want it to be. I think where South Carolina has an advantage from an offensive perspective is the run game.
Yeah,
John Emery, who got hurt week 1, is still the rushing leader for LSU. So they're expecting more to come out of Josh Williams and Caleb Jackson, or John Emery, of course, talking earlier. But there's an opportunity for LSU to drive more in the run game. Otherwise, USC can realistically probably rush 3 or 4 and just kind of run a nickel to be able to try to lock down Kyron Lacey, who's also again playing really well this season. So.
Yeah, you got to score. We've seen LSU trying to get this rush offense together. South Carolina rushing 65% of the time. So we have the two sides of the spectrum here. The importance on stopping South Carolina, like their offense isn't super dominant at South Carolina. They were able to make things happen against Kentucky, but it was mostly because of field position. They're starting way closer. They have super short drives. They're starting on their 37 yard line where, if LSU can score consistently, they're pinning them back, within the 25, hopefully. And that's going to be a huge thing here to slowing down South Carolina is force that offense to work, force Sellers to make tough passes, because we know the quarterback tier here, I would say Nussmeier is a little bit better at building a sustained drive, completing passes, stringing it together. We saw how good they were at third downs and fourth downs in that first game of the season. But it's a must-win game for LSU. You can't go into the season 1-2 with your only win being against Nichols, who you gave up 20 points to. So this is a huge one for LSU, a huge one for Brian Kelly. I mean, another road test with College Game Day there, flashy lights, it's on the line. They're 7-point favorites. So
Yeah.
I mean, I like LSU's chances here. I think it'll be tough for South Carolina to replicate that defensive performance they did last week.
It will be, and I think you talked about the bright lights, bright lights and William Bryce, right? We haven't necessarily talked about the LSU defense, so we know what we can come to expect from the LSU offense. Garrett Nussmeier is a top 5 quarterback as of right now in the SEC statistically, and on the defensive side for LSU, I think the main story in the offseason was Harold Perkins. Is he going to play standing up? Is he going to play with his hand in the dirt? And he has been able to, find himself all over the field, finding himself second in tackles. You look at other players such as safety Major Burns and Greg Penn. Brian Baker has this defense rolling, but it feels almost deceptive because they still are last in the SEC in yards given up. This could potentially pose challenges when it comes to the running ability, not running skill yet, but ability that we see from USC with Lenore Sellers, who clearly takes a ton of carries, and Raheem Sanders, who is their leading rusher and is running at a pretty solid clip. So that two-headed monster between Lenore Sellers and Raheem Sanders could pose a challenge to this LSU defense. And so I'm not concerned about LSU's offense being able to score when they need to. I think the USC defense will be able to make stops, but it's more so what can this offense put together against a defense that's still kind of trying to figure it out. They have the players that we've seen an improvement, but it's hard to really judge the improvement just yet off of 2 games and 1 game against an FCS opponent in Nicholls State. So I think overall it'll make for an interesting game. I mean, I'm ready to hit predictions if you want to hit predictions.
Let's do it. I mean, it's LSU or 7-point favorites. We got College Game Day there. The over under 52.5. I got it. I don't want to be just riding the fence on the Vegas odds here. I like 23-17 LSU winning at South Carolina.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I'm going to take 31-13 LSU winning. This would be the 8th straight win for LSU, dating back to 1995. The last time this game was played, TJ Finley was the quarterback for LSU. And Colin Hill was the quarterback for USC, who I'm not fully sure who that is, but I do know TJ Finley is still playing college football.
Yeah.
But in terms of my pick, I like it 31-13. I think LSU finds a way to hit a stride here on offense. And I think we still see some of these struggles when it comes to the defense. And I believe that just based upon the turnover woes that we've seen over the last couple of games for USC, I can't imagine how LSU doesn't force a turnover or 2 as well this game.